Your list price sets the vibe. It's a seductive invitation or a major red flag. Let's choose wisely. On today's episode, we have my primary partner and former realtor, Roger Grayson. Thanks for being here, Roger.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I heard you had some questions about pricing.
So, if I'm the seller, what are some different pricing strategies and maybe what is the best one that you recommend?
That's a great question. And again, man, I kind of hate this, but it's one of those answers. It's like, it depends, right? So it depends on the market. It depends on the home. But I think talking about different pricing strategies is a very interesting conversation. This is something that I never gave much thought to before I got into this industry as a professional. And so I think it is important for consumers, especially sellers, right, to have an idea when they're talking with listing agents and deciding who to hire. What kind of pricing strategy is that listing agent suggesting for their sale? So let's talk about some different ones. Market value. I know we talked about market value a couple of times in some other episodes. This is market value is what a buyer is willing to pay, and as close that we can get to that number is by looking at the comps or comparable properties in the neighborhood that are similar to the home you're trying to sell. What did those comps sell for? And that helps us really narrow in on what is the market value of this home. So, and to be honest, that's kind of the pricing strategy that I used in a lot of my career to date, although I've changed now because the market has changed.
Well, what if I think my home is worth a lot more than you're suggesting for the price?
I mean, it is the seller, the homeowner, the seller's decision. Ultimately, it's their home, it's their financial asset. So it is ultimately their decision what they put the home up for sale for. I recommend that you hire a good realtor and you pay attention to their recommendations because I think that's the best chance you have of getting the most money for your home. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. So pros and cons, right? Like, let's talk about pros and cons of each of these strategies. So this market value strategy, it's a fair and reasonable price. It makes sense. You can show the comps and it seems reasonable to buyers. It's reasonable to appraisers and, it's very straightforward, I think. Cons, you have to really understand local market dynamics and you have to have someone who is good at looking at comps. And like, for example, this is what appraisers do. This is their profession, right? They're looking at what market value is. And so I've taken some classes on how to price a home in the way that an appraiser would appraise a home. So that's how I typically do market value, is I try to follow as closely as possible to what an appraiser would do.
So, are there times that you might price the house over market value or under market value?
Yeah, those are definitely two more pricing strategies. So let's talk about pricing it over market value. Um, this type of pricing can also be referred to as aspirational pricing. Personally, I like to call it delusional pricing. And oftentimes it's not being done on purpose as much as it is a seller who is stuck on a price point that's too high for the market. And they just believe that their home is worth that much. And sellers can be very emotionally attached to their homes. Once you decide to sell, though, you have to let go of that because it's no longer your home. But yeah, pricing it too high, it one of the thoughts behind that, because you might find realtors who would suggest that. And the thought behind it is that it gives you room to come down.
Hmm.
Um, I think the data shows that you end up losing more money and the seller walks away with less money at closing if they price it higher to begin with than if they price it lower to begin with. So that's another strategy we'll talk about in a minute. But so pros and cons of this aspirational or delusional pricing that's more too high, or higher than market value anyways. The pros are that it allows the seller to test the market. So it's something, again, it depends on market dynamics, because during COVID, in the extreme seller's market, you could almost price it in anything you wanted and it didn't matter. It was going to sell. So, there's a time and a place for everything, right?
It's okay to test it, I guess, because, if you put it on at a little higher price and it sells, it worked.
It did, but you have to be careful with that, because if it doesn't work, you are shooting yourself in the foot for sure.
Be on the market longer than you want, making less.
Yeah. So you put it up at the high price. Now you're on the market. Now your days on market is climbing. And the higher your days on market get, the more buyer's psychology is like, what's wrong with that house? Nobody else wanted it yet, so why would we want it? And then you're reducing price. And the more that you reduce price, even once, but a lot of times, especially in this market that we're in now, in this buyer's market, you see places with reduction after reduction after reduction,
Yeah.
And that to me just screams desperation, right?
Yeah.
Like when I see that, I'm coming in low.
Well, what is this market strategy of pricing it too low? Can't that shoot you in the foot?
Possibly, but I haven't found it to be a problem yet. I have been testing this pricing strategy and I really like it in this market. I really like it. And kind of part of the way that I came to like the pricing strategy was because I was on the buy side when it was happening and I saw how well it worked. So the example is, we were shopping for places over on the west side, and we were shopping up to 500,000, I think was the max. And we went to see this place that was priced at 464. And we were passing other buyers during our showing. So they had a ton of showings that weekend. And I think it was their first weekend on the market. So they had a ton of traffic. They got multiple offers. Now we're in a multiple offer situation. So we offered our max. And I talked with the listing agent and I looked at the comps, and it was my opinion that that place was probably worth 515 to 525. So even at our max of 500, I thought we were still low and I didn't know if we were going to be able to get it. We did win it. And it appraised I think it appraised a little bit higher than the 500. So me and the listing agent were on track with what we thought the value was. So my buyers got it and walked away from closing with immediate equity because the appraisal came in higher than their purchase price. But more than that, the seller got rid of that thing right away, right? They were able to go under contract, within the first week, close in the standard 30 days, be done with the whole deal, get out, get their money. Now, the other way to do it is if you would have priced it at market value. If he would have priced that at 515, it might have sat there for weeks or months. They would have had to do price drops.
And still get the same amount that they ended up getting.
They
most likely.
They probably would have ended up with less.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I really like this pricing strategy. Sometimes it's called auction style pricing. I've also seen it called absorption pricing. For a buyer's market where, you've got a lot of inventory and so you're deeply discounting homes just trying to move them. I've also seen it called event-like pricing. So that pricing strategy is really my favorite pricing strategy in today's market. I actually suggested it to a seller this morning. And it's tough. It's a tough pill for a seller to swallow because you say they've been looking at their Zestimate. They've been looking at other homes in the neighborhood. They know that all the homes in their neighborhood are going for 700, and I come in and I go, "Your house looks great. It looks like it's ready to go on the market tomorrow. It looks beautiful." So you would think I would say, "Oh, this is worth at least 7, maybe 710." And I'm coming in and going, "Let's price it at 650 and see what happens."
Yeah.
And it's scary. It's counterintuitive. It's scary. I get it. But the results speak for themselves.
So are there any more other pricing strategies that you use or know of?
Yeah, definitely. There's some pricing strategies that fall under the category of psychological pricing. Um, and you're probably very familiar with this idea of like what the numbers say and how they affect buyer's psyche. So and sometimes it's called charm pricing, but like the difference between setting the price at 600 versus 599. And all the time we see this. We see listings that are at not just 599, but it'll be like 599 900 or 599 990, and I know that the listing agent thinks that they're being really smart and they're going to attract buyers. Something I recently learned about that pricing strategy, though, is you have to be conscious of these price breaks where buyers are setting their search parameters.
Mm.
So if you were to price it at 599, you're getting like that's way better than pricing it at 605 because at 599 you're getting all the buyers who capped their search at 600, right?
Right.
And at 605 you're missing all those buyers. But also, at 599 you could be missing buyers who have the bottom of their search set at 600. So in my mind, it almost just because of that, um, aside from the charm pricing, just because of that, it seems like it's a better idea to price it right on the zeros.
Or the 25s.
Yeah, the 25s, that's another break. Yeah, at every 25, 50, 75. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Also numerology.
I
I
was
mean,
gonna say, what if you had a lucky number?
yeah. I know. I was doing a deal last week where the listing agent had the price set at one of those 9999 numbers, and we offered at a 0 number or a 15 or 25 or something. And they countered us, and he still kept in the counter the new price, but it still had all those nines in it. And so when we resubmitted a new offer, which is like a counter to a counter, we resubmitted a new offer and I added up all the numbers so that they added up to like a 9 or a 6 because I like threes and sixes and nines.
I know.
And for no other reason, right? But we do that when we're shopping with addresses too. Like we were doing showings the other day and we were adding up the street addresses to see what that number added up to when you get it down to a single digit. And was that a good number? Was it a lucky number?
I do the same.
What else? Price anchoring. This is another psychological pricing strategy, but it's the same thing as pricing high, pricing over market value. The idea is that you price it over market value so that when you reduce the price, it looks like it's a deal. But
Got it.
I'm not in favor of that because,
Seems a little risky.
yeah, I mean, as soon as you start reducing the price, it smells like desperation to me. I guess it could be a deal. Yeah, and sellers always want to talk about like what their original price was. Well, we've come down all the way from 750 to 715. I don't care, and the buyer doesn't care either.
I mean, it all goes back to, what is the market going to give? If
Right. Right, because if you priced it at 750 and nobody bought it yet at 750, then it obviously wasn't worth that. So, I don't care about your original price. But sellers, they hold on so tightly to it.
Hey, do you remember that story we saw on Facebook about that family who bought that house in Wash Park? And you weren't a big fan of the way they were listing the property and the
Yes.
pricing.
Yes, they were doing break-even pricing, which I do not agree with at all. There may be a time and a place for it. I mean, that's kind of the overall message of this video, right? Is like there's different pricing strategies and maybe there are different times and places and market dynamics in which to use each of these strategies. So perhaps there is a time and place to use a break-even pricing strategy, but I don't like it.
Well, what does break even pricing strategy mean?
So what they do is and maybe we'll be able to put a clip in here where you can see it. So they bought this home in Wash Park and then one of the neighbors filed a petition to make the home a historical landmark. And they bought it specifically to scrape it. They were planning to build a new house on that lot. And as soon as that neighbor put in the application for the historical landmark deal, like if that had gone through, they would not have been able to scrape it. And so as that process was happening, they went ahead and they put it back on the market and they were going to try to get rid of it because they weren't going to be able to do what they wanted to do.
It sounded like they had put a lot of money into the work on the house and the plans for the whole new remodel.
The new build.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the plans for the new build, and it sounded like they were trying to put that on top of what they bought the house for.
Yeah.
Is that what break even? They wanna break even because they're losing money now?
Yeah, that was exactly what it was. He stood there in that on camera and he said, "We bought it for this. We put this much money into it, so that's how much we made the sale price." And I saw him say that and I was immediately like, "No. No, that's not the way you price a house if you want to sell it, because the buyer doesn't care what you paid for it. The buyers don't care how much money you put into it. They're shopping and they're hopefully going to have a buyer's agent helping them out who is going to like I don't make an offer for any of my buyers without running comps and seeing is this list price in line with the comps because I'm sure not letting my buyers overpay for anything. I'll let them underpay, but not over.
Everybody wants to underpay.
Right. Yeah, so he said that. He was like, "This is how much we bought it for, this is how much we put in, so this is how much we're trying to sell it for." And I just I was so sad for those sellers because I just thought they're probably not gonna be able to sell it for that because it doesn't make any sense, it's not in line with market value. In fact, the only time I've ever been fired was a seller who was doing that kind of pricing. He said, "This is how much I bought it for. This is how much I put into it." And he had put so much money into that place. He had tricked out the basement. He had turned that place into a king of the hill. And I don't know, do you know that term in real estate, the king of the hill term?
No.
It's this idea that you made your house so much better than all of your neighbors that you're now at the top of the market. And it's tough to get that back from a buyer when they're looking at all the comps here, you know? So he put in the theater system, an indoor hot tub, a really nice wet bar, like all this stuff, right?
Did he put a fountain in the front yard?
No, it was mostly the basement that he had put all that in. So anyway, so that was driving his pricing. And I was kind of new at the time and I was not handling clients as well And I let that guy run all over me, and eventually he fired me, and I have never been so relieved.
Maybe it was better that way.
Yeah, I
It's a
mean,
good learning experience too.
it really was. I mean, and at the time I hadn't heard of this break-even pricing strategy, and so I wasn't really able to say to him, "Hey, this is the strategy you're trying to use, and here's why it's not a great strategy." But anyway, now in a market where your break-even point is under market value, that's kind of a different story. Like, you know, the pros of this break-even pricing is that it's financial risk mitigation. It's all about the numbers, and so you're making sure that you're not losing any money. So that's a pro. It might be a competitive advantage if your break-even amount is under the comps, and it's based on concrete financial data, so it kind of takes the emotion out of it. But the cons on that break-even strategy are that you're not making anything, right? Like, we all hope that real estate appreciates over time and that eventually we're making money on our real estate. So if you do end up selling it at this break-even number, you're not making any money. But there's no margins for price reductions either. Like, once you put it on at that number, and it's exact number you need, you really don't have any room to go down. So that's another con to it. But and it's very difficult, I think, to raise a price after you set it at a certain level, depending on how much, but it looks weird and counterintuitive to raise prices sometimes. Again, it depends on the market. We talked about a bunch of different pricing strategies. Hopefully this is helpful to homeowners and sellers alike. Yeah, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, it's been really helpful to me and I've had a lot of fun. Thanks.
If you like this content and want to support the channel, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go.